So now we're going to talk about formal introductions. Formal introductions, here's a good question to think about. What if you sat down and read a historical background introduction for every book you read? You think you would understand that book a little better? You could take it in context. Well, that's exactly what a formal introduction is. A formal introduction is a survey of the background information for a book of the Bible. Here's a couple of books that Dylan and I recommend. They are formal introductions to the Old Testament. It's an introduction to the Old Testament and an introduction to the New Testament. These are just books devoted to giving you the background of every book of the Bible. This one is written by Longman and Dillard. This one is written by Carson and Moo.
When were
Yeah.
they published? Fairly new?
Yeah, they're more recent. So these are good. These types of books, these aren't the only ones out there. I had a good one talk through the Old Testament and talk through the New Testament by Boa, Kenneth Boa. Those were good. I got those. One of the pastors that used to be the pastor here, he gave them to me, Bill Wheat.
House one time, Kim Boa.
He was in your house?
Years ago, he came here, many years, like 30 years.
Wow. Good books, though. Good background evidence. These are good. The ones by Boa are good. They give you a good background for each book of the Bible. That's all they're writing about, is the background.
Like the history, like what happened before that? What happened before the Testament?
So it would be talking about Paul wrote the First Timothy and say, here's how we know that Paul wrote it. Here were some things about Paul. Here's some things about Timothy. Here's some of the issues that were going on in the Roman Empire at the time. And here's where Paul was when he wrote it. And this is about in Acts where we think it was happening. Just to give you that kind of understanding of where does it fit. Who wrote it. In fact, we're going to go over each piece of a background. You want to establish author. Who wrote this book? Remember, one of the tests for the canonicity of a book is, was it written by a prophet or an apostle? Was it approved by a prophet or an apostle? So you want to be able to establish that. You want to say, who's the author? And with the author, information will be inside the book usually, or outside the book. You can read historical accounts of who they say wrote it. Certainly with all of Paul's letters but one, Paul puts his name in it every single time. And so internally we can see that Paul wrote, we're going to look at Titus here in a few minutes. But you want to establish who wrote it. And there's evidence for that. You want to establish when it was written. When you can know when it was written, you can know what was going on and what issues were going on at that time. Was Nero, if Nero was the emperor, was it around 64 when Rome burned? A little after that? Is the church starting to see some persecution? Is it before that? That sort of thing. It's creating a defense. It's giving you context, the background for the book, but it's also creating a defense for the book to say, yeah, we know when it was written, we know who wrote it. Provenance. Provenance just means where it was written. Where was the author when he wrote it? Where was Paul in Corinth? Where was Paul? Where was it written at? Does it say in the book where he was when he wrote it? And who was the destination? Who was it written to? It was written to Titus. It was written to the church. And you start to look at, okay, if it's written to Titus, what do we know about Titus? What's the background of Titus? Or the destination that they're at? What's going on in that area at the time? What's the purpose? The occasion. What's the occasion of the book? What's the purpose of the book? Maybe it says it inside the book exactly what the purpose things. John said that you could fill the world full of books about all the things that Jesus did, but these things he wrote so that they would know that he was the Christ. What literary genre is it? The Bible has these different literary genres. Genre is just a type of literature, right? So narrative. Narrative is written in prose form, where it's just somebody talking about the various events that happened, a historical narrative. And then this happened, and then that happened, and then this happened. Other genres of biblical literature would be poetry. So historical narrative, you can think of 1st and 2nd Kings. Such and such king reigned for this many years. These are the things that happened, and then he did this, and that happened, and then this terrible thing happened. He did what was evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, and then he died. And the total amount of his reign was this long. And then his son sat on the throne, that sort of thing, explaining, and the Assyrians did this, and the Arameans did that, and Israel did this and that. Poetry, like the book of Psalms, like the book of Job. Poems, Lamentations, Song of Solomon, poems. It's Hebrew poetry, and the Hebrews use a lot of poetic devices within their poetry to help you understand. They will use this thing called Hebrew parallelism, where they will say the same thing twice in a row, just using different words, just for emphasis. So poetry. Is it prophetic? Is it like Isaiah, Jeremiah, Daniel, Nahum, all these prophetic works? It could be writing about the law told you to do this, you're not doing this, therefore God's going to judge you. It could be talking foretelling or foretelling what's going to be happening. Wisdom literature, like Ecclesiastes, like Proverbs. Wisdom literature. These are short sayings that are just filled with awesome. You get a lot of bang for your buck with one proverb. It's saying so much in one little sentence. Wisdom literature. It's a style, it's a genre of literature. And I might add also, not just in the Bible. I mean, these are all, of course, others write in these types of stuff. Apocalyptic literature. Apocalyptic literature, you see, like in the book of Revelation, portions of other books of the Bible are very apocalyptic, usually dealing with end times things that are in our future. Epistles, just a fancy word for letters. But epistles follow a certain form. You will see a certain form in these epistles. If you read the letters of Roman citizens that are still around, you will see that the same format that Paul uses and Peter and John use, that they're writing epistles. And that's the genre of biblical literature. So you want to identify that just so you know what you're dealing with, just so you can understand. It's poetry. Poetry is going to use a lot of metaphors and similes, a whole lot of figurative language. Apocalyptic is going to use a whole lot of symbols. Okay? Not to be taken literally. Okay? So just to help you understand what you're dealing with, it's good to talk about the genre. So author, date written, where it was written, which is just this fancy word provenance, not to be confused with providence. The audience or the destination, the occasion / purpose, what's the purpose? The genre, and then are there any controversial issues? Scholars love, is it on?
Now it is.
Okay. All right, your computers are charging now. Before they weren't, except for John's. Scholars, certain scholars, especially today, they love to say things like, well, Paul didn't write that book. Paul didn't write 2 Timothy, and here's why. Well, you need to be able to identify whatever issues they have with the book so that you can answer them. So that you yourself can know, well, maybe Paul didn't write this. Well, what are they saying to say that Paul didn't write it? What's the evidence that Paul didn't write it? What's the evidence that Paul did write it? So it's good for you to be aware of that sort of thing. These are all components of a formal introduction. Yes, sir?
Isn't it a lot of times audience. The book was not written to someone, it was written for someone.
As far as in the
Well, let's say hypothetically a king.
commissions, yeah. Yeah.
We'll do a book on this. You will do a book on X, and it better be favorable toward me and my reign or what.
Yeah.
Is it more often that it's written for someone rather than to someone?
In the Bible, it depends on what you're talking about. Almost all of these are written to someone, but it's for something. And it never lets anybody off the hook. Nobody's put in good light in this, unless they were really good. And even when they're good, you go and read 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, you see that even the good kings screwed up. So it's not like if they're being commissioned by somebody, God says, you go tell Nineveh this, the book of Nahum. This is written to the people of Nineveh. Other books, other prophetic works, tell the sons of Israel this, but it is God commissioning a prophet to you go and tell them this. And then like other prophets like Amos, he's also telling them, don't just tell Israel, but you go and tell the Moabites this, and you tell the Edomites that. And in the case of the epistles, Paul is writing to the church at Thessalonica. So he's writing to the whole church. But he's also writing something for everybody to circulate all of these letters. He wanted all of his letters, the letter that you read or that was written to you, you send to that church and they'll send you the letter they got. So it is written to somebody, but is also a book about what should be done in the church as a whole. So from that standpoint, it is written to, but it also is applying more generally to all. As far as epistles. Actually, as far as any of this goes, because this is God's word. So it is written to specific people, which you need to identify first. But it is also, you are a third-party beneficiary. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Oh. Now there's always a different type of evidence you can look at for really any of these, except for the controversial issues. Internal evidence is evidence that's within the book that you're looking at, within the book of the Bible that you're looking at. It might give the author's name. It might be written in the first person. He might say, I saw this happening, and when I saw that, I was disturbed. Daniel writes that at one point. There may be names and events that are mentioned that point to historical information about the time or location, or who was. It may even mention who the Nero was, or it may mention who the Caesar was. It may mention a pharaoh's name. It may mention a king of Assyria, so that you can understand, oh, it's talking about this time. We know that it happened at this time because Tiglath-Pileser III, who was king of Assyria in the 8th century, was mentioned. So we know it happened around this time. Places can be mentioned that point to geography and location. Internal to the book, there'll be plenty of geography or any sort of city that's mentioned, just to give you more context of where they're talking about. But this is all, and there's all sorts of internal evidence to answer all of these questions. Okay. But there's external evidence, and that's evidence outside that particular book of the Bible. External evidence might be eyewitnesses or other written accounts that corroborate biblical information or give more information about what was going on, the people mentioned, the places mentioned, and what it means, and it will give you more external evidence to back up answers to these questions. Archaeological data will support biblical information as well. For the longest time, they believed there was no such thing as Hittites. Now they know there were Hittites. The Bible talked about Hittites, and in fact, in the 19th century, they accused the Bible of being in error because there were no Hittites, and then they found Hittites all over the place. So archaeological data can be used as evidence to say that such and such was discovered here to back up what was said here. Like I found when we were teaching through the book of Isaiah, this one scribe who had really made a name for himself and only cared about himself. He had his God said that the tomb that he made in the high place would be smashed. And they found the tomb, and his name was smashed. You could only see like the first 2 letters and the last 2 letters, and it was empty. So it was kind of cool. Cross-references from other books in the Bible. The Bible informs on the Bible. You may find evidence, like Paul, you're going to find evidence for Paul all over the place. So it's internal to the Bible itself, but external to the book that you're in. Does that make sense? Okay, in order to write a formal introduction, you will have to rely on scholarly works. You can get so much from the Bible, but you will need the help of something outside the Bible just to understand how to answer these questions. And so I wanted to give you a demonstration from eSword as a one-stop shop for you to go to. Now, all of the websites I told you about before, you can go to those websites. Sonic Light is an excellent website. Dr. Thomas Constable has done a great job. You can download his PDFs and look at all of his notes on all of he's got formal introductions to every book of the Bible.
And that was what again?
Sonic Light. I can't remember if it's .net or .org. But if you just Google Sonic Light, Thomas Constable, it'll be the first one, typically. But the main thing, if you want a one-stop shop, the main thing you can use is eSword. And how many of you have eSword? Okay, excellent. Right, so let me show you an example. Because we're going to do this now for the book of Titus. You're going to write a formal introduction to the book of Titus. You're going to find the info, and you're going to do it. But if you're going to do it, I got to show you how. At least with eSword. Okay, are you all familiar with seeing this? I know not all of you have it, but this is eSword. These are the books of the Bible. These are the chapters. I have Genesis highlighted here. These are the chapters. In this pane, we have the Bible. So Genesis 1:1, Genesis 1:2. In this pane, we have dictionaries. In that pane, I have commentaries. And in this pane are notes. I don't use this pane, really. If you...
Get it to go like that.
Top along the edge, you see the A, B, the B, C, D, E, top.
Oh, you've got the
The app. Well, I'm not on the website, I'm on the app.
Oh, no.
you're on the app. Well, this should be the app. Okay, we'll deal with you in a minute. For everybody else, there's always one in every class. Way to go, Curtis. Did you do this in Germany too? He broke the internet.
We'll do it around the world.
Okay, so what you want to do
That's called Al
is, I'll go to fix
I
it.
knew that was coming.
Scroll down to Titus, click Titus, click chapter 1, and when I did that, it popped up Titus chapter 1. Now it also popped up over here in my commentaries pane. So in this commentaries pane, I actually wound up downloading 2 new commentaries. You may want to write this down because I don't think the other things we told you were adequate enough. There's the Popular New Testament, a popular commentary on the New Testament. Right now I'm just giving you information about a different commentary to download.
Oh, yeah, I got that screen, but I'm just trying to get to that commentary.
You would have to download it, so you'd click the download.
Which one are we talking about?
Well, I thought you could add 2 more to your list. You don't have to right this second. You may want to.
I'll write them down. What are they?
Yeah, the popular commentary on the New Testament.
I can't find it. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, I'll find it. It's at the top.
Yep,
A popular.
it's not the most popular. I'm going to come out with the most popular next year. And the other one is the Cambridge Bible for Scholars and Colleges. These are both 19th century works.
Bible for schools and colleges.
Yep.
Cambridge one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the one in England, not Massachusetts. The other one is a popular commentary on the New Testament. I picked it because it's popular. It's not popular anymore, isn't that funny? Okay.
How do you find them? Do you go to commentaries?
Yeah. Let's see what you're at. Go to download
Oh, got it.
commentaries.
And then just search for them.
There's the popular one.
Oh, it is quite popular. Okay.
Click it.
Was that
Okay.
search or display? Display?
Oh dear. No, go to download
I did that. I thought that.
and then commentaries.
Uh-huh.
So that's the popular one. And if you scroll down, you should see the Cambridge one.
Now, does this mean it's already downloaded it?
No, not yet.
No.
That means it's ready to download.
Queued up.
That means it's queued up to download.
So then, download it later.
Oh,
The Cambridge Bible
right there.
for schools and colleges.
excellent.
And then scroll down.
Scroll down.
Mm-hmm.
This one?
Yes.
To what?
Keep going. The Cambridge Bible for schools and colleges. And then you're going to go up
And start.
to download.
I did.
Go
And
up.
then
Oh, she's doing it, yeah. Download, start.
Cool.
And once that's on your computer, you'll have to close out of
Uh-huh.
eSword. I almost said E-Trade.
So, it's on a different level.
Yeah.
So you close out so it can update and you open it back
Yep.
up?
And you open it, and then boom, you get those.
Okay, sorry, I missed those down.
All right, no. This is exactly it. This is what we're doing. So this is useful. Okay. Now, with your commentaries, you'll see over here B, C, V. If you have a PC, you see the BCV on your PC. BCV. B gives you book level info, so I'm going to click that. And this is good for... Okay, once I clicked it, you see that all of these with the I have information about book level data. So I can now start to look at these. Now the fun thing about this is your B, C, D, E up here. These are just quick buttons that you push. If you want to have everything in your panes like this, that's great. If you want the Bible to be the whole screen, you click that B, it'll blow the Bible up to here. You click this, you click this, the pane button.
Oh, okay.
If it hurts, click the pane.
That's fantastic.
So if I want to blow up my commentaries here, now I can read it a lot better. And I've got a nice big window. And look at this, the popular New Testament, the introduction to the Epistle of Paul to Titus, section 1, Crete and the Cretans. It's going to give me data about Crete and the Cretans. Crete is going to be important because that's where it was written to. It gives me info on the church at Crete, date, and design of the epistle. Ooh, interesting. Titus, the genuineness of the epistle. Ooh, this is going to talk about some scholarly issues, some controversial issues. And this talks about eldership. I can click on the Cambridge Bible and see what they've got. This is epistles to Timothy and Titus. So this is going to give me a background of both, which you will frequently see. People believe that 1 Timothy and Titus were written around the same time. So you can scroll here and look at the contents. Sometimes you have to go through a bunch. There we go. External evidence. Genuineness and date of the epistles. So they're giving you some information right here. Ooh, look, witness of the apostolic fathers. They're giving you some data to prove historically we know that Paul wrote this. So you see, if I keep scrolling, look, there's internal evidence. Golly. Look at this. I'm scrolling through. This is the intro to the book of Titus and 1 Timothy.
Those aren't big books.
Yeah. The intro is longer than the book.
Just thinking that.
Wow. This one's got a lot. Jameson Fawcett Brown has some good stuff. Genuineness, is it right? Time and place of writing, the occasion of writing. Notices of Titus. This one's kind of short. Some of these have like no information. The Epistles of Titus, probably 66 or 67, apparently written in Nicopolis. Well, this doesn't really do much for me at all. Thank you.
Hey, it's easy to read.
Yeah, it's easy to read. Didn't give me a lot of data. Alexander McLaren, okay, great. This did nothing for me either. He's got verses listed. Maybe there's more info if I click C for chapter. No. How about V for verse? No. He does me no good. How about F.B. Meyer? I get some introduction from him. Not much. He gave me some review questions. Thank you. That was helpful, perhaps. Sometimes you toggle through these to see if anything else pops up between the chapter and the verse display. But pretty much if you click book display, it will give you the intro if one of these commentaries has an intro. So now your job for the rest of this class is going to be to write a formal introduction for the book of Titus. Spend the time putting it together. Okay, there's 6 of you here. What you can do as a class is everybody take one portion and figure it out. Spend your time on that. But you're going to divide up the components, and we're going to share our findings in the last few minutes of class. So this is what you need to do. Find the author. Find internal evidence of who wrote the book of Titus. Find external evidence to prove that who it was. It's Paul. When was it written? This one's interesting to try to figure out when it was written. Where was it written from? Who was it written to? Give me background information on this, because you need to know some things about Crete, perhaps. You need to know some things about Titus as well. It'd be good to know about Titus. Who is this Titus guy that he's writing this letter to, and what should we care about him? Does the Bible say anything else about Titus? I wonder if Titus is mentioned anywhere else in the Bible. He's not mentioned in Acts, but I wonder if he's mentioned somewhere else. What's the purpose? Is there internal evidence? Does he state what the purpose is? Point that out. If you want to understand more of what I'm looking for, just look at these commentaries and see what they've written. I have put on the website, and maybe you downloaded it already, but I have given you my simple picture of Titus. I don't want you to copy that. I want you to find this on your own. So spend the rest of your time writing a background for Titus. You can write it on a piece of paper, write author, and then write internal evidence, maybe write internal and then leave some space and write external, but find the internal evidence to prove to you that it's Paul. I mean, who wrote it. I mean, it tells you right away who wrote it.
Did he write it now?
Yeah, well, I have my opinion. People's opinions are kind of all over the place on that one.
I was trying to get you to tell us the answers to the questions.
I, Paul, am writing this in the year of our Lord 60... No. Unfortunately, yeah, he doesn't have that in there. So I'm going to be walking around helping you. But if you all want to decide, or if you want to try and tackle the whole thing by yourself, you can. Do you all want to split it up? Somebody track down author? Because here's the thing. For your assignment, you're going to do this for Philemon on your own.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
What is the credibility of the folks that we see that have written the commentaries?
That's a beautiful question.
And how can
Yeah.
we trust what they've said?
How can we trust them? There's a few ways that we could trust them. Number one, what are their credentials? This is very important. If you really want to understand a book that you're reading, you need to see the credentials of the person writing it. Okay? If you're reading a history book of somebody who studied one area of history and they didn't get very far, and they're writing about something that's outside of their expertise, careful. Don't read it. There's other ones you could read. So the people that have written this are scholars, and it's public domain scholars, typically from the 19th century, the 1800s.
For both of those commentaries?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it is leaders of the church, and they are scholarly men who have advanced degrees from seminaries. So you can look at their background, but also look at the content, look at the argument they're making. Who are they drawing on? Because a lot of this information, it's stuff that you can go find yourself. Like, I have my library with me. Well, my digital library. Right here. I've got my library also on eSword. I have the Ante-Nicene Fathers, who these guys are going to say that Irenaeus mentions Titus. He quotes from Titus. Okay? You can go find that yourself. This scholar found it and he told you where to find it. And I double-checked what these guys had to say, and I found it myself. I can also do a keyword search and pull up a keyword. If I want to pull up Titus, I can write Titus and search every book that I've got. And then I can look through the different books to see where's Titus, the word Titus. So, who wants to work on this by themselves? Okay, Jarrett is the lone man. All right, you take the ball and run with it. Everybody else want to work together?
I like the divide and conquer idea.
We'll see who wins.
I'll take the author.
Oh, thank you. You got the author.
You're done.
Now make sure you're going to provide references in Scripture where you find out about who wrote it. Internal to the book and external to the book. External in Scripture. To find out more information, give us some good background on Paul. You don't have to write every single thing that Paul did. You can summarize.
So John's got the author?
Yeah. Who wants the date it was written? You got the date.
And what's your first name?
Joe.
Joe.
Joe Fry.
That's a mojo word.
Who wants where it was written from? Provenance. All right. Who wants the audience and destination? Who it was written to?
I'm not armed of anything.
Okay. That's okay. Can you find who it was written to just by looking at Titus? Like, all you have to do is look at the book itself, look in there and see, does it say who he's writing it to, and what's the name of the person, and then what's the... Mm-hmm. All right. Who wants the purpose? You got the purpose? All right. The genre?
I'll take a genre.
The genre is pretty easy.
Yeah.
But at least be able to talk a little bit about epistles. It's an epistle. It is a letter. The formal title is the epistle, to kind of gives it away. And then controversial issues. Whoever gets done first gets the controversial issues. All right. Hit it. Hot diggity dog. Hot diggity dog. Hot diggity dog. Hot diggity dog. Hot diggity dog.